Welcome again to one of the most exciting lessons on Educator.com, the Story Check-In, all about characters. Believe it or not, you can't tell a story without characters, and there's an old saying in literature called, well, it goes something like this: character drives story. Story does not drive characters. We'll kind of find out what that means later. So, to make characters, we have to make them believable. And there's one fundamental thing that'll make any character believable, whether it's a person, anthropomorphic rabbit, whether it's a planet that can talk to you, whether it's a magical creature, doesn't matter. It's going to say, all human beings seek happiness. All human beings seek happiness. I could easily change this famous quote by this really cool guy, Aristotle, to say, all sentient beings seek happiness. All characters seek happiness. But that is so general that we have to kind of narrow it down into specifics. What a character thinks will make it happy, or what will make it happy, is going to kind of determine who or what that character truly is. But first off, let's go with something very, very specific here. Characters are people in a book that's somehow pursuing what they want to be happy, but characters are not the following things. They are not their costumes or their appearance. They are not their roles in the book, and they are not their occupations, and they are not their abilities, talents, or superpowers. This is very, very important because if you describe a character this way, you're describing a caricature. In fact, to kind of invoke a popular film critic, if you can describe a character without referring to their appearance, their occupation, or their role in the story, or possibly even their gender, and you can still describe that character, then you have a really, really strong character. But if you have to talk about their costumes, or appearance, or role in the book, and you can't talk about anything else, not a very strong character. Let me give you an example. Voldemort wears black robes. He has a snake-like face. He uses a powerful wand to kill enemies with a powerful spell. He is in charge of the Death Eaters. He has a snake called Nagini. I have not described Voldemort as a character. Are these important things about Voldemort? Yes. And if I was writing an essay about Voldemort, I would refer to a lot of these things. But that's not Voldemort the character. That's just what he wears, how he looks like, what he does. You have to get more specific into that. What drives Voldemort? What does he want to be happy? Voldemort fears his own death. Voldemort wants to live forever. He cares nothing for other people and has no friends. Voldemort enjoys collecting and hoarding objects because it makes him feel stronger. Voldemort values might and power above all other things, especially in the pursuit of immortality. Now, do you know what Voldemort wants to do to be happy? Yes, you do. Have I described his appearance or what he does? Well, I did describe his collecting and hoarding, but I was mostly referring to that's something he does to feel stronger. I could have just said, Voldemort wants to feel strong, and I gave you a specific example of that. And he values might and power above all else. This is an example of telling you about a character. Now that I got that done, let's move on. All characters must care about something. So, in addition to wanting to be happy, these characters have to care about something. So, this can be something very small or very large. Your character can care about being the best at a video game, or your character can care about fleeing all the slaves in the universe. It can be just trivial or small. And it's usually going to be something abstract or intangible. So if you have a heroic character, that character cares about justice, and he cares about fairness, and he cares about goodness. These are abstract things. These aren't things I touch or feel. In contrast, we got Voldemort, who cares about something abstract, but it's just about living forever. That's all he cares about. Now, what's also interesting is your character might not even know about what they care about. And Dwight Swain, in one of his character writing books, gives a very good example. I have a man who always folds his clothes nicely, always cleans his house spotlessly, always, cleans the bathrooms on a very set schedule, brushes his teeth exactly for 5 minutes and counts how many times he's brushing each teeth, and then he cleans up his bathroom right away after he's done with it. Then this man gets married, and he gets married to a very messy woman who throws her dirty clothes all over the place, doesn't clean the bathroom, towels everywhere. When she cooks, she's got pots and pans all over the kitchen. Does this man, is he now suddenly learning what he cares about? Well, he cared about cleanliness and order and probably a little bit of this thing. You can go ahead and look up what OCD means. I'm not going to tell you. But now, in this conflict, he's learning what he cares about. He didn't know it before, but now he sure does. So, now that we kind of know what characters think about something that's very abstract, they usually have specific goals that are associated with their care about. And again, these can be things that are very small or large. I want to free all the slaves in the state of Alabama. I want to defeat the boss at the end of Metal Gear Solid. These are two examples of goals. One's very small, one's very large. They will almost always involve something symbolic or concrete. That is something you can touch and something you can feel. Voldemort wants to live forever. Abstract, intangible, untouchable. Voldemort makes Horcruxes. He's going to put his soul into it, and so you kind of have to stab his journal to kill him. That's something concrete. So, in addition to having something they want to be happy, something they care about, and having kind of specific concrete goals, they will also do actions to pursue these goals. Once again, very small or very large. And it's from these actions that authors will show these actions and not tell you about them. It is through these actions that we learn about what these characters are really caring about. J.K. Rowling did not write a book that said, Voldemort cares about living forever, and that's all he cares about, and he has no friends and does not know love. That's boring. I'm being told what Voldemort cares about. No, I want to see Voldemort do certain things, and through learning and through doing these things and watching his actions and how he treats other people, I learn what his goals are, and I figure them out because I'm shown, not told. Voldemort returns to protect his Horcruxes and kill Harry Potter. I'm being shown what Voldemort cares about through those actions. So, in summary, a character is a person who has the ability to care about something because they want to be happy. They will usually have a specific goal in mind, and they will perform actions based on that goal. Wonder what happens when two characters are in the same room, or in the same car, or in the same school, or in the same place together, and their goals are not the same, and sometimes they contradict each other. I wonder if you could make a story out of that. Let's go ahead and go to Wrinkle in Time as our example, and we're going to look at the character Meg, and we're going to be shown, through her actions and her thoughts, what she cares about. Meg wasn't usually afraid of weather. It's not just the weather, she thought. It's the weather on top of everything, on top of me, on top of Meg Mary doing everything wrong. School was all wrong. She'd been dropped to the lowest section in her grade. That morning, her teachers had said crossly, "Really, Meg, I really don't understand how a child with parents as brilliant as yours are supposed to be could be such a poor student." And on the way home from school, walking up the road with her arms full of books, one of the boys had said something about her dumb baby brother. At this, she'd thrown down her books on the side of the road and tackled him with every ounce of her strength she had, and arrived home with her blouse torn and a big bruise under her eye. That's just 3 paragraphs. What has Madeleine L'Engle shown you about Meg? What does Meg care about? What does she do to show you what she cares about? Well, she cares about her dumb baby brother, but don't you ever tell her that, because she'll show you by her actions how much she cares. Now that we've kind of gone over that, characters do have certain roles. Once we know what a character is and we know what they care about, they're going to perform certain roles in the story. One role is the lead character or the protagonist. They are almost always the first character introduced. I can think of a lot of great exceptions to this rule, but in the case of Wrinkle in Time, our protagonist is the first character introduced. And they normally care about something that the reader cares about. Imagine, well, some of you are grade school students, and some of you do have siblings, and some of you are probably also frustrated with school. I mean, I know I was. Everybody's frustrated with school at some point. So this character cares about something that you care about. And that's part of the way that a character becomes relatable. And it's very, very important to have a relatable character. And for most of the book, we see something from a character's perspective. I'm going to give you an example of what that is in a bit. Normally, if a character is a protagonist, we know their thoughts and feelings as well as their behavior. In fact, a lot of the times books are written what's called first-person narration, in which case the book goes something like this. I woke up one morning and I was really hungry. I was also really frustrated by all the phonies I was surrounded by in school. So I decided I was going to leave school and get in a lot of fights just to prove how great I am. That's called first-person narration. It's really just the narrator talking about himself and everything that he's doing and everything he's seeing. That is when we really know the character's thoughts and feelings. Here we go. What is perspective? Well, let's read this section from Wrinkle in Time. Meg looked up at her mother. Oh, well, Meg is looking. Well, that's giving me her perspective. Half in admiration, half in sullen resentment. Those are emotional words. I'm getting an idea of Meg's emotional life. It was not an advantage having a mother who was a scientist and a beauty as well. How does Meg feel? Mrs. Murray's flaming red hair, creamy skin, and violet dark lashes seemed even more spectacular compared with Meg's outrageous plainness. Whose feelings do I know? Whose perspective am I seeing? Well, I'm not just saying, Mrs. Meg Murray has flaming red hair, skin that is very white, and has violet eyes and dark lashes. This makes her very beautiful. That's a boring description. I'm not just giving you the description of Mrs. Murray. I'm giving you Meg's perception of Mrs. Murray. And Meg's perception of it is something like, my mother is a lot prettier than I am. So, supporting characters are another character role. They're usually introduced after lead characters. They may or may not care about the same things the main character does. We do not usually see things from this character's perspective. That's pretty uncommon. We also don't usually know supporting characters' thought life. But we do know that their behavior, and we're going to guess about what their thoughts and feelings might be. Who's a supporting character in Wrinkle in Time? Well, how about the dumb baby brother? So let's go ahead and, this scenario, Charles is leading Meg on a particular place, and she's going to the creepy house. Meg did not wonder that the house had a reputation for being haunted. Again, I know Meg's perception, but let's keep reading and see if we can learn something about a supporting character. A board was nailed in front of the door, but Charles Wallace led the way around to the back. And there it appeared nailed shut too. But Charles Wallace knocked, and the door swung open slowly, outward with creaky, rusting hinges. Is that a little creepy? Is that a little scary? How would you feel? But how does Charles behave? They get a lot of fun out of using these typical props, Charles Wallace said in a reassuring voice. Come on, follow me. Charles is a 5-year-old kid. But what is he doing? How is he behaving? What do I know about Charles just based on these little interactions here? I know Charles is very brave and very confident, and later we're going to learn he's a little too confident. But I'm learning things about this character based on his actions. So, villains. Villains is another character role. They're usually introduced in a way that makes a reader dislike them. Harry Potter, Book 4, Goblet of Fire. We are introduced to Lord Voldemort. And what does Lord Voldemort do? He kills somebody! Alright, so he's a very unsympathetic character, and we don't like him. How about the beginning of Star Wars Episode 4? We're introduced to Darth Vader, the villain. What does he do? He kills somebody! So we learn these characters are villains mostly because they're doing stuff we don't like. The villain, by definition, will care about something that conflicts with what the lead main character cares about. At the end of Wrinkle in Time, we meet the man with the red eyes. What does he care about? How does that conflict with the kinds of things that we already know Meg cares about deeply? We will know the villain nearly as well as we know the lead character. In fact, there's kind of another truism when it comes to fiction writing, and that's a lead character, a good guy, is only as strong as his opposition or the villain is. Finally, there is no such thing as a perfect character because perfect characters are boring and dull. Characters are always going to be made of a mix of weaknesses and flaws. And then finally, they're also going to have strengths. So, for Meg Murray, she lacks confidence, she's easily angered, and she's frustrated at school. What's her strength? She has something it does not have. Now, we've kind of discussed character roles and we discussed character flaws, but there's also this thing called character archetypes. This shows up most frequently in science fiction and fantasy, and it's based on a work called the Monomyth. I'm going to write that down for you. The Monomyth. All stories have a villain and a protagonist and supporting characters, but beyond that, there are certain archetype roles that other characters fulfill. And I'm going to give you a few of them because these are the most common. One common example of an archetype is the archetype called the herald. What does a herald do? Well, the herald acts as a messenger to the protagonist, and when the herald arrives, he or she interrupts the protagonist's mundane, boring life, and then invites this protagonist into the more fantastic, magical world. What's an example of this? Well, think about the first Harry Potter book. Hagrid. Hagrid comes and says, "Hey, Harry, you're not just a kid who's abused by, your horrible relatives. You, Harry, are a wizard, and I'm inviting you to come to the magical world of Hogwarts. Want to come? By the way, I'm going to torment your horrible, half-brother over there. That's a lot of fun." Another example of the herald is, R2-D2. Luke Skywalker, he's in the desert, he's minding his own business, he's on moisture farms with his uncle, again. R2-D2 comes along and plays a message. "Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope." Whoa, hey, maybe there's something more than just being on the farm in a desert. Maybe I, Luke Skywalker, need to go do something great. Who's a herald in Wrinkle in Time? Who plays that role? I'm not telling you. The mentor. The mentor is another archetypal role. Once this hero is on their journey and they're beginning to go out of the boring world into the exciting magical world full of adventure and danger and stuff like that, well, they need a wise old man in the story. The wise old man is there to teach the protagonist, and they're there to train the protagonist. Who's the wise old man? In Star Wars, we got Obi-Wan Kenobi. "Hey, Luke, you must learn the ways of the Force and become a Jedi like your father. Here's his lightsaber." Gandalf. "Bilbo Baggins, I want you to come on this magical journey and take that ring, and you're going to learn a few things about yourself. Oh, by the way, Frodo, it was mercy. I'm teaching you about mercy towards Gollum." This is Gandalf. He's playing that archetypal role. Hey, who's the wise old man in the Harry Potter series? What was his name? He had a beard, he wore glasses. Was it Snape? I can't remember. Should be obvious. I'm not telling you. Who is the mentor in Wrinkle in Time? Well, it turns out in Wrinkle in Time, it's not just one person as a mentor. There's actually several people who play mentors, and they're not wise old men. But what do they teach Meg? What do they teach her about herself? That's really, really important later on in the story. Finally, we have the Shadow. The Shadow is the villain. However, they're a villain in a specific way. Usually, the villain is connected to the hero in some way. And we kind of think of the hero and the shadow as almost opposites of the same coin. Maybe the hero looks at the shadow and thinks, "Man, I could have become that person." So, let's think about this. How is Darth Vader a shadow to Luke Skywalker? Well, he's his father. They are connected in a certain way. How about Magneto from the X-Men? How is he a shadow to Charles Xavier? Well, it turns out way back in the day, they used to be best friends, and they used to really like each other, but they had some really violent disagreements, and now Magneto's a villain, and Charles Xavier is our hero. Voldemort. Well, that should be pretty obvious. He tried to kill Harry way back in the day, and his wand backfired, and so they have a connection, and it turns out in the last book that connection is really spooky and kind of scary, and then we have the Voldemort fetus, and I don't want to talk about that. Another great example came from a game by the name of, well, Baldur's Gate a long time ago. Yes, character archetypes happen in video games too. You're fighting, and somebody wants to kill you. Well, it turns out you find at the end that this guy who wants to kill you is your half-brother, and you're both descended from the god of murder. That's a strong connection. I don't know what is. So, how is Voldemort a shadow to Harry Potter? How are both connected? That should be really obvious. I bet you already know the answer. So, to kind of sum up, characters have to care about something, and they have to do things based on what they care about. It's not just they want to be happy, there's something specific that they think will make them happy. Will it make them happy? I don't know. It could not. And they're going to have certain roles in the book, and these roles can be basic like protagonist, ally, supporting character, or they can be these archetypal roles like mentor, shadow, herald. But most importantly, they got to have strengths and flaws, because perfect people are boring. So, thanks for using educator.com. Go ahead, read these books, and kind of take note about what these characters are and what they care about. Until then, thanks for using Educator.